Okay, we are live. It's World Cup day. We're competing with Argentina and England right now. So no pressure to make it exciting for you all to stay tuned. July 15th, it's 7 days away from the longest day in the year and the beginning of summer. And exciting. A lot of things are going on. We have great guests. We're going to talk about AI and advanced manufacturing and robotics and all kinds of things. But before we get going, there is our John Sibley Butler.
I've been upside down and around about and back again. I've been so many places I can't remember where or when. And the clock on the wall was my only boss and my only friend. Never really was a friend of mine.
Let's more light.
Woo, woo, woo. All right. Well, there's a lot going on, gentlemen. And, to be honest with you, way too much when it comes to the world and things. You guys will give me your take on the latest on the war that will never end or what have you. But I really want to focus on or share what's going on in Texas. There's all kinds of things. Foxlink Group, first AI factory in Fort Worth, big investment, the Wistron AI supercomputer campus in Fort Worth, 761 million. The Light On AI manufacturing campus in McKinney, $1 billion. Tesla's humanoid robot expansion. They're building a new something called the Gigaset is a manufacturing facility where they're going to put the robots and all that. That's going on. I made up several people doing that construction. Supposed to open up in volume by 2027 or mid 2027. So they're going to build this pretty quickly in 12 months. Then TI is doing a lot of stuff related to robotics and advanced manufacturing. And then there's a company in Austin called Aptronic. And then there's all kinds of things around logistics, vision, and education from, workforce development and stuff. And we have a great guest to all that. And, the grid is fine. The weather is great. So what's going on, Johnny?
Well, I can tell you what I've been doing. We've been working in Texas here to create a refinery on the coast, and it's a $5 billion deal with the federal government. And the whole issue is we haven't built a refinery in America in 60 years. And I hope that it will be in Brownsville, Texas. We've had all kind of discussions, and I think that everything is turning so fast. But the mobility fastness has always been there. What is happening now is because of the social media. Everybody knows that the mobility is going very very fast. And so as all of these changes, I mean, look at it as what I call a Markov chain, if you will. I mean, if you look at all of the problems, we've always used tools to solve problems, whether it's an airplane flying from England to America, or whether it's an automobile going from the country to the countryside to the city. So right now, it's all about communications. Right now, it's all about everybody knowing almost exactly what you do with all the videos and etc. So Andreas, I think that the United States, of course, I've said this before, for the first time in my lifetime, we have a competitor. China is a real competitor. It is not the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was like Puerto Rico, if you will, with weapons. China is very, very different. The intellectual force in universities is very, very strong. The military is very, very strong. The technology is very, very strong. Everything that we have, they also have, with the exception of our Constitution. So I think from an interesting kind of situation, the question is, what will America look like in 50 years? What will the children do? We've already seen how the kids have reacted in New York, where they've given up on the future in terms of the American model. With the voting structure in New York City in terms of quote socialism. We've already seen how this is growing among the young. So what we've got to do is figure out how to keep the quote the American dream, if you will, of market economies and jobs, which now, of course, are more likely to be in China than in America because of manufacturing. We got to superimpose that on all of the technology that we have. So we sit here and we ask one question. The big question of the news are now, okay, is all of the investments that's going on into the new economy, and you know whenever it is, that's AI, whether it's data centers, will it be, is it good? Well, I saw the CEO from Japan, of a big company, said, well, it is very, very good. And if you don't understand it, it's like spitting up what? It's like refusing to get on an airplane. Okay? So Andreas, we at a very, very interesting point in world history. And then you add to all of this, all of the mobility in the world. And Lou Ellen, that was an outstanding editorial you wrote on immigration this week. Just an outstanding editorial. And when you look at all of that, every people are moving. People are moving so much around the world. And the big question that we have, will they continue to want to come to America? Remember that China is there. They have the university structure. I taught in China. I taught an MBA program and introduced the whole idea of technology transfer and market economies to China. So I think that it's important that we look at it in a comprehensive kind of way. And here in Texas, what we've tried to do is really, really provide the standard market economy, capitalism. Let's start a company. Let's provide new jobs in this new era of AI. And this new era of AI is real. We are in our first iteration of AI. And what will the 10th iteration look like? So it's a lot going on. That's a good question. Thank you.
Great, great, Llewellyn. What say you?
Well, I don't think you can look at it, Andres, with respect as just as a Texas phenomenon. And I think that if you think the developments globally are confined geographically, you're likely to be tripped up. We now live in a world that is interconnected in ideas and technological theories without respect of national frontiers, and how that's going to play out, particularly with China, which is still very much in a nationalistic mode, is going to be very interesting. I want to thank Johnny for those very kind words about my editorial on immigration. That too is a very important part of the future because there's going to be a global market for talent, and talent will have a huge value, a greater value than it has to this point in time. And talent will be very mobile. It can be mobile both virtually and physically. But the hunt for talent, and unfortunately and sadly, at the moment, we tend to be rebuffing talent for a set of reasons that are not entirely, to my mind, logical. We're throwing people out of the country. We're barring from. Yesterday, I made a television program with the AAAS, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, and they are pointing up to a lack of new PhD candidates, a dip in the number of people who will be getting PhDs for the foreseeable future. That is a huge blow to our future. That is not something to be cast aside as a political bit of caterwauling. It is a very real threat to our well-being in the future. We have heretofore, almost for 200 years, but certainly for more than 100 years, been a magnet, a powerful magnet for talent, for ambition, for ideas, for people who wanted both the political and economic freedom granted in America. We're beginning to close some of that off, and we're not going to get the talent from the world, which we've been able to cherry pick to this point in time. If we are not getting the talent from the world, we are not going to leave the world. That's a very simple cause and effect equation, nothing very complicated about that. So I think it's a very critical moment. We are laying out the next 3 decades in the next 2 years, and that is an awesome and frightening reality.
Well said. Um, well, lots going on in the scene in Austin in particular. There is a conference on robot learning, November 9th through the 12th at JW Marriott. There is a physical AI summit at the Central Austin venues hosted by F50 Nexus and Texas Association of Business, October 26th through the 28th. There is the Software Technologies for Aerospace Robotics coming December 17th through the 18th at the virtual and in-person options in Austin. More TBD. There is an Austin Robotics and AI monthly gathering at the High Camp campus that RD goes to. That is July 29th, 6 to 8 p.m. There is the UT Austin Annual Robot Parade, which is November 12th. And that is at the Speedway Mall from the Speedway Mall to Gregory Gym Plaza. And then there is a free kids in-person robotics workshop, July 18th at the Hampton Inn Austin Airport, from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. Lots going on. And so let me introduce our guest because, we continue to have all kinds of things to discuss and do. And RD has been a manufacturing guy for a long time. He worked at companies like Applied Materials and APW Enclosure Systems and Barco Lighting Systems and Thermo Fisher Scientific and Plum and Flextronics or Flex. And he now has a consulting firm. He's an old friend, plugged into what's going on with robotics and AI and advanced manufacturing. RD, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So tell us from your point of view. Let me ask you straight out. No running around to the point of, is AI for real in advanced manufacturing and robotics? Do you see it is happening?
It is absolutely real, and we are on the front edge of it. And it's gone through a number of cycles, but I think where we're at now is we're hitting this inflection point where the cost versus return on investment will actually allow it to keep going, right? And the underpinnings of that, I think you can tie back to Austin in this beginning. There were some really smart people, Jake Pickle, uh, Pipe Powers, all those kind of folks that
Hmm.
pieced together MCC. For those that don't
Hmm.
know, you can Google that. And then that followed into the Semiconductor Industry Association, Semitech. And then that same template was then used for Pecan Street Project, right? But that same sort of realization of, hey, the shiny new toy isn't going to get us there alone. You have to have all these other puzzle pieces to create that infrastructure. And so we're actually seeing that sort of unfold. I've gone back and forth. I've got 30 plus years of manufacturing engineering background. So I've been back and forth to China a number of times and met a lot of wonderful people. But what they have is they have the ability to just not have anybody vote on it, but just declare we're gonna make an entire city, a manufacturing city, out of the middle of somebody's farm, right? And suddenly you have an entire manufacturing ecosystem pop up, right? Um,
Hmm.
but in the realm of us saying, hey, we've got this crisis of labor and all those sort of other things. I mean, you've heard the expression "never waste a good crisis," right? And those same crisis things are actually going to provide a few opportunities for us. Uh, I have just started to see some really, scientific, wow, this is amazing going to happen of Aether manufacturing and even platforms. They're both planning on doing lights out CNC machining, right? Well, lights out CNC machining has been done in some respects of take one machine and load it up with a bunch of parts and let it run all night long, right? That's one
Hmm.
aspect, right? But being able to do all the material movements, the entire ecosystem, as opposed to humans load up parts during the day, that sort of thing, but a more complete ecosystem that allows you modularity to completely detach your, facilities location independent of your labor market. And there's a laundry list of other things, but I'll let somebody else breathe and talk here.
Well, you're exactly right because it was Bobby Inman who brought us. When I was director of ours, brought us the MCC and, um,
Hmm.
and George Kospeski was all of our
Yes.
fathers. We did a great thing in Austin. And my question, and let's talk about other Austins. Let's talk about Silicon Valley. Let's talk about 128 in
Hmm.
Boston. And from your perception right now, and I can tell you my perception, and I'm in the Hall of Fame for helping to create Austin like it is, but I can tell you what I think.
We
I
didn't want
think
to
we're
forget
fat
you.
and lazy. I think we're wealthy as hell. I do not see the entrepreneurs giving back like the car dealerships did in the 1980s. I see, I just see lots of organizations going on without the entrepreneurs. For example, Andreas just rattled off a whole lot of meetings that's going on. Well, we had those meetings, but they were hosted by the entrepreneurs. They were hosted by Jamie
Hmm.
Rose, put together the Angel Group, and we got the guys from Dallas and oil and gas to come in. We lean a whole lot on Silicon Valley. We lean a whole lot on the science in Boston, and we lean a lot on the science from the military and NASA and etc. So my question is, as you look at, and Andres wants to start with Texas, do you think that we're fat and happy? Do you think the fact that every house in Austin now is $1 million or more is just a reality? And how do we get the fat and happy people back? And I don't mind saying I help make most of them fat and happy. How do we get them back to look at the future and engage with us in what we want to do for the next 50 years?
Well, I will throw down the gauntlet, Mr. Butler. I will throw down the gauntlet. Bring yourself to the Austin Robotics and Artificial Intelligence meetup once a month out at highcam.io, right? You will see some people that are hungry and creative and want to work with each other. I wholeheartedly agree with what you're saying, right? There is a bunch of, ego, fat and happy, right? And I tell you what, I learned this the hard way because I was always wanting to work for the companies that were the biggest and the best and the baddest, right? And what happens is that people, once you create those companies, people don't want to turn loose of it, right? They're like,
Mm-hmm.
don't touch anything, right? And you get that Kodak syndrome, right? Kodak made the first digital camera, and they didn't want to turn loose that $100 million physical film developing business, and they lost it all, right? So yes, there is that aspect that is in play, right? But there is a whole ecosystem that is going to move faster and quicker than all those big puzzle pieces that are foundational as it is, right? In the world of manufacturing, you look at things like a conveyor belt, and lean manufacturing calls those things tombstones, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason they call tombstones is because once they're in place, nobody wants to move them, right? Because it's big and messy, right? Well, I don't think the world is going to be that slow and methodical going forward. The people that are going to be able to do these things are going to be these little niches that create community. And one of the absolute best communities I've seen for is the Austin Robotics and Artificial Intelligence meetup at HiCam once a month. HiCam is a space that's 52,000 square feet devoted to advanced manufacturing, robotics, and workforce development. But the really important part of that piece is they made it all pretty and stuff, so it looks cool. People feel good when they're in that environment, but the energy that's in that building is just not the same as I get at some of these big, official, prestigious kind of ecosystem events that I attend.
I understand because we did it all with startups. It all started with startups with everything from Whole Foods and etc. So I guess the question is, if we look at where we are, and let's just take manufacturing because it's changed. I taught in Japan for 14 summers, and they were doing manufacturing in the home. Families had manufacturing in their basements and etc. So what would be your vision? Because right now I can tell you, RD, we cannot build an aircraft carrier in America. I don't know if we can provide socks for our service members. I don't even know if we can build machine guns in America. So, given
There's
where
a
we are in the reality of the global supply chain, with China where it is, uh, how do you jumpstart what you're doing and create the manufacturing, the new kind of manufacturing? It might be that we put a machine in every home to produce something. That's what the Japanese did to start out. So what's your vision of manufacturing that you can bring to the table for Texas and America?
Ooh, you just turned me loose, baby.
I'm turning you
Mm.
loose. You know me. I mean,
All right, all right. Well,
I'm getting
I'll tell you
revved
what.
up for Texas football.
Okay, all right, all right, all right. So, the current ecosystem means that you have to have the all the approved vendors in place, and there's a big structural difference to get that through, right? Things like ISO 9001 certification, so that you can be certified and all that. There's a lot of looseness, shall we say, to manufacturing in China, right? But there is coming up an ecosystem that is going to allow us to use things like LiDAR, right? So you're using lasers and you're using coordinate measure machines in a small controlled environment so that you can validate things. There are laser spectrometers where you can shoot a laser at a piece of metal and determine that traceability. All the kind of blockchains, right? The ability to create these ecosystems, to think them up and make them is faster in the United States, right? But it can also be structurally, Chinese do a lot of, we'll say, mining data, and they can capture these information and then execute these on a global scale, right? So it's going to be kind of a race for us to provide our level of ingenuity to create these opportunities versus China's ability to execute these things at scale, right? But I see some awesome opportunities. For instance, Kamate Richards over at 10 Things Tech. He's created an ecosystem of all those puzzle pieces you need for remote manufacturing, right? For that uh, deployment of the technology, right? Because you've got the model of the robot, you got to coach the robot, train it, teller operate it, generate the deployment assets, operator workflows, validate it, and then improve the system, right? There's a whole ecosystem, and usually that involves half a dozen different groups and entities all trying to work together, right? And now these things are all kind of coming under one hub, right? Uh, you've got this ability for like AALO .com. They're a plug and play modular atomic energy company. Same thing with Last Energy. They're a modular uh, ecosystem of atomic energy, right? So now let's say you want to do something like a data center out in the middle of the, cheap land, right? Well, that same ecosystem for making a data center could also be making CNC machine parts because you might be located it next to a steel mill, right? An area where you're not necessarily going to have people work. That people like, hey, I don't want to live next door to a steel mill. It's loud and dusty and whatnot, right? I want to live here in Austin. Well, if you can do these things like what Aether Manufacturing and even Platforms is doing, they're going to be running where you can be here and teleoperate and work stuff. And all that stuff has been, we've seen things like that since the 1920s and Disney movies and whatnot. I remember watching those cars where they'd show a car just sort of raise up in four wheels and drive over the top of traffic, or start flying, right? But the reality is, we're getting to the point where that Moore's law, that cost versus performance, and don't waste a good tragedy, right? COVID really said, hey, we actually can do some of these things remotely, right? And the thing that is, it changed the ecosystem that let people say, hey, we have to, so now let's figure it out, right? And becoming a crisis with competing with China might go, oh well, we have to figure it out now.
Yeah, I think I like it. And I think we got to put material science in that, what material science is in that manufacturing. Okay, thank you very much.
Oh yeah, well, there's a wonderful material science, the Society of Material Science Engineers, SAMPE. Excellent group here in town.
Okay.
Go ahead, William.
Buddy, I like very much what you say, but I want to ask you, I know you're a manufacturing person, but aren't we to some extent distracted by humanoids and by physical robotic applications and losing
absolutely
losing sight to the fact that the fundamental changes are unseen because they're in software rather than being physically enchanted with something that looks vaguely like a person, and that we're going to have our society upended by AI. It has begun. I don't think that's disputed, but it won't necessarily be in the form of physically identifiable robots, but more quiet, unseen robotic hands?
Oh, I talked to there's a group here in Austin that I hang out with for the last 17 years at Mozart's every Friday morning on the back porch, Mozart's Coffee. And I've talked to people like LiDAR is going to change the world as we know it. And it's going to happen about like our notice, about how much we notice GPS, right? GPS is a phenomenal thing that's just sort of in the background that just sort of crept up on us, right? And I think our ability to do with LiDAR is going to change like that as well. Just take something simple like project management. Let's say you're going to run an event. Well, usually you want boots on the ground so you can verify every table, every chair, all that sort of stuff. But if you can create a CAD model of that stuff, right, then you can actually create an infrastructure that somebody having never seen something has got a visual, interpretation. So that all this thing in the middle where you've got project managers and people babysitting, there's going to be a phenomenal amount of things that gut that particular area. And I will tell you where there is a metric ton of opportunity in the world of jigs and fixtures, right? The simple little things where you've got something, let's say somebody has a one-man band doing welding or something, right? Well, their ability to interface with the web and take an order and make something the right size. Well, if you can have your fixtures automatically adjust to the right length, to cut the part the right length automatically, to bend the parts the right distance, right? All these little puzzle pieces. And that's where we should have started, right? But the people that are at the country club bragging on what investment they made, they don't know how to brag about this little widget that, moves 10 inches and interface with the web, right? Now, foundationally, that's like having clean water in a society or something, right? You don't have cheap, clean water and build a society. You have to have that puzzle piece, right? There's a wonderful book that was put out here in the Austin area, Road, Rivers, and Old Boy Politics. And it talks about the critical nature of that infrastructure. So obviously, there's a lot to be had in that infrastructure building. It's just not cool, and people don't know how to, make that investment, and they don't know how to brag about it at the country club. So that's it's really
I hope,
decent missiles.
RD, I hope when you're talking about country club braggarts, you're not including John Sibley Butler, who tends to favor the country club life.
Well, I'm a founding member of two of them in Austin. A proud
I've,
Austin
I've,
Golf Club and the Great Hills Country Club. Founding
I've
members.
never seen him brag about a jig or a fixture. But so people can understand the humanoid. It's kind of like when people started putting their money on 3D printing, right? 3D printing was sort of the golden child there for a while. Then it kind of became commoditized, right? But the thing that I was, really interested, there's a professor named Luis Sentes. He was a NASA. He built a humanoid robot for NASA, the Valkyrie, right? And his students, Nick Payne and some others, started Aptronics. Aptronics got part of a $350 million round that Google was part of, right? Here recently. They've got like a $5 billion valuation, right? But one of the things that's really impressing me is that they have built what they call a robot part. And what that does is that lets them do those same sort of things over and over and create that data and ecosystem. Because there's just way too many variables. We think of you've got, teaching a robot like you would a child, right? But that's just one person. You have to think that one person that's teaching the child, that they're built on a knowledge of many generations of knowledge, right? So they're creating that, they realize that, and they're also not bragging about it too much in the sense that they're going, look, all the people that are out there building humanoid robots, what you're seeing in video clips of, that's after it's fallen down a bunch of times, right? It's failed a bunch of times. So, but in terms of an ecosystem, they have a sister company they've spun out called Elevate Robotics. The guy that's in charge of that is a guy named Paul Voss. He's got a tremendous background in something called Ross Industrial. Ross Industrial is an open source ecosystem that's built off another open source platform called ROS, Robotic Operating System. But Ross Industrial was a software done by Southwest Research Institute that is designed to be kind of a Rosetta Stone that puzzle pieces together how you communicate between all these different robots, right? Think of it kind of like a printer driver, if you will, for robots. It lets your computer talk to all these different robots through this system, right? Now, the fact that Aptronic is tied into and spun out Elevate Robotics is just a simple heavy duty arm kind of place, right? So they're realizing that yeah, there's a space for those humanoids, but the people that are going to win that race are going to be the ones that can easily interface with the other parts of the ecosystem, the stuff that's not really designed for a humanoid. And there's a lot of space there that's not humanoid centric. Well, if they're the one creating that ecosystem, then they're 3 steps ahead of everybody else because they know how to position themselves on both sides of that fence.
Yeah, let me.
Let me just finish my line of questioning here. Uh, all of these conversations tend to involve China. Is China and the sense of endless competition with China, is that beneficial or is that misleading? The closest thing to a template we have for what is happening with AI was the Industrial Revolution, which took place largely in Britain, but it didn't take in place in Britain in competition with any other country because Britain controlled the markets, they were within the empire. And so you had a situation where a technology could be pursued almost for its own purposes. Should we not possibly be pursuing AI, robotics, and that entire suite of things for its own purposes, for its own frontier, for its own seeking of knowledge for the sake of knowledge, rather than casting it in this sense of being in breakneck speed in a race with China?
Llewellyn, we have been gutting STEM in so many different ways. We have just been gutting STEM. You know, all hell capitalism, but the reality is things like Silicon Valley were developed because of government money being dumped into that area, right? That created the ecosystem and the fertile ground, right? I haven't seen anybody go out to the desert in, outside of Phoenix and start up, Silicon Valley, right? That a lot of these, awesome things that are created with capitalism, they're often in fertile ground and things that have been hammered out in the risk taken by a coordinated collaborative dump of money into an ecosystem for pure research, right? Yes, I believe that there is a lot of things to be concerned about with China, but I almost think that part of our biggest problem is China's ability to be given that edict from on high and our desire to kind of keep it all to ourselves, right? There's a lot to be had for us doing a better job being collaborative, right? It kind of tickles my brain a bit, quite frankly. There's always, you've may have heard those questions about, what's the greatest, invention of the last 100 years or et cetera, right? And I never was satisfied with people's responses to that. And so I went down the rabbit hole of trying to scratch my own brain itch on that one, right? And I didn't answer that question necessarily, but I satisfied my own brain itch. And what I came up with was the moment somebody decided to call a meeting to standardize screw threads, right? Because that ecosystem of bringing everybody together meant nobody won on their screw threads, right? But we all benefited on the whole, right? And you can see parallels with things like, everybody getting together for the world wars and things like that and pulling together resources for manufacturing, right? So I really think that in some ways, we focus too much and in some ways not enough, right? Because China is focused on, restoring the glory of China, right? They want to be number one. They don't like having to play second fiddle in terms of power, influence, and control, right? China has a long history, thousands of years, thousands of years. There's a lot of pride tied up in that kind of, ecosystem, right? And they have the capability to do a lot more, quite frankly.
I agree. By the way,
Can I just end up here? We went through a period of Germany is doing it all right, we're doing it all wrong. Then Japan is doing it all right, we're doing it all wrong. Now I'm hearing China is doing it all right, we're doing it all wrong. The durability of America has been its multiplicity. And I do want to endorse what you said. The role of government in original research is vital, essential, and has paid off over and over and over again. I remember at one of the Aspen Institute meetings when Jim Schlesinger was chairing it, and a conservative economist said, we don't need the government, private enterprise, and Schlesinger with his steel trap mine listed, I think, 23 major developments that all owed their genesis to government funding. My own attitude is the government is the great creator and a lousy executor. When it comes to execution, it's time to get the government out of the way. And Elon Musk has proved that again and again. Thank you. I thought that was very interesting.
I agree with you, Llewellyn. We have to. I mean, because Americans, one thing we're going through is people don't understand science. I mean, they don't understand the importance of science and technology, and there's the reaction against science. They don't understand that wealth comes from science and technology, and not management, accounting, and finance. I mean,
Preach.
So what happens is that I like to say that Microsoft is just a computer science class. That's all it is. That's where it came from. The science of flight came out of science of flight, and of course Germany also taught us that. Germany had they elevated science over everything, and of course our space program is German, and a lot of the things that we do is German. So, well, let me get to our idea here. So in terms of where we are, and by the way, the most important idea is the idea of an idea. So you can write that down, right? Right. I think my question to you is this, and this is what we're struggling with, right? I do believe that we're struggling with the whole idea of a future for the next generation. That's what the struggle is. And also, we're in a clash of civilizations between the West and the East. I think that. But the world is highly connected. And Llewellyn is right. I mean, when Silicon Valley did the miracle, 65% of all the entrepreneurs were immigrants. Okay? We ran about 1 in 4 in Austin, Texas, right? And it was high also in Boston. So the concrete that an American would understand, let's say that you're running for president of the United States. Where will the next jobs come from? From the manufacturing vision that you have. What's the process by which, as I said before, are they going to be at home? So we built Austin with the following logo, right? We're going to take science and technology and create new jobs and create new wealth and new investments. That's what it was based on. We moved away from management, accounting, and finance for a while. As Llewellyn said, once you get going, that kicks in. What's the logo now? I mean, what's the brand now? It has to remain a future for jobs and opportunities. So in a practical kind of way, what's the technology transfer? What's the mental transfer of that to the American people who I'm convinced don't understand science and technology and trying to take us back to the 1900s here in America? We didn't become we were a third world country in America until the 1940s. So what's the vision? What's your, I mean, if you're selling something, what are you selling?
Hey, let me jump in. So Johnny and everybody, take 3D printing. 3D printing is going to totally revolutionize the whole notion of buying something.
That's right. And it came from NASA.
Instead of buying a finished product at Target, you will print the product in your garage.
I agree.
You will license the design from whoever, and you'll pay for the right to print one copy or whatever you pay for. And that is just the beginning of what it could be, right? And as the printing materials and the printers get better and better and better, maybe I will be able to print my own Ferrari in my own garage 10 years from now for $50,000. They're paying a million.
20 years ago, we had a student in law school printed out his own gun
Yeah, exactly. And that
at the
was
University of Texas.
pretty amazing. That whole the discussion about can I do it? Am I raw? And so I think about the entrepreneurship possibilities of people printing toys and printing whatever in their garage and never having to go to work or work for anybody. And with the internet and TikTok and Instagram, you can build your own billion-dollar company by yourself.
Well, I think so,
I
but my
think we
question,
are, there is an assumption here that the future is about things, because the past has been about things.
hmm
It may not be about things. We talk about manufacturing, making this, making an automobile, but it may be about some other dimension. We're being very linear if we take going basically from the steam engine to AI, which all of which have enhanced the production of things. We may have reached a time when there are other wealths and values coming into society that
Sure.
are not physical.
Yeah,
Well,
so
let
real
me
quick,
see if I
RD, so this in many ways, this is Jensen Huang's talk about the fact that he's in the business of building digital factories because he makes the chips to enable that. But go ahead, RD.
well, let me see if I can actually stitch this together just a bit because I I had some arduous circumstances growing up. So the my priorities on money is a little bit different, right? And I kind of think of making the world a better place. So I actually have contemplated some of those things of, once we get enough, then what, right? And community is a big part of that. So I've got a domain that I've sat on and haven't done anything with. I call it the Cross Pollination Association because I've got a bunch of ideas and inventions, and some of those would entail being able to use AI and augmented reality and things like that, so you could build your own house, and a bunch of other things, so you could build your own electric vehicle. Because I think with self-driving vehicles, if you put these things on a small scale, you'd have an extremely aerodynamic vehicle that's not much bigger than a go-kart, and it can be extremely efficient and run highly autonomous in almost like a bit packet format. If you were, extremely lightweight on rails, you could eliminate all stop signs and all stop lights. But the primary focus of that is that you would eliminate our populations ever encountering a home mortgage or a car note, right? So imagine a society that goes through their whole lives not having a mortgage and not having a car note, right? So I think you start taking these systems and people going, you know what? Instead of devoting 30 years to a big company, I can pick out a niche that's too small for a big company to go after and collaborate and develop some stuff. I mean, the barriers to entry are getting lower and lower. There's a company here recently I heard about called Makistry.ai and another one called CAD as Code. They are AI powered 3D CAD platforms. So you can just talk and start creating a 3D CAD model. And this would have taken a whole laundry list of people involved beforehand, right? You would have had to have a project manager. You would have had to have a salesperson. You would have had to have a mechanical engineer and some drafters and, all sorts of things, right? Now you're just going to be able to talk and it starts spitting out CAD models, right? So the ability, and there's another company here in town called Foundry Lab, an amazing company. They just moved in from New Zealand, right? They're doing a 3D printed mold and then metal casting under vacuum. So this is an amazing thing that can be used for all kinds of really hard to make, extremely hard alloys, right? And they can just sort of do it effortlessly in three thin wall construction, 3D shapes, all kinds of really organic stuff, and a thin walled construction, stuff that's just not possible. Well, you could have just talked these things into existence, right? So I think that things are going to start moving faster than the big companies are going to be able to respond to. And you'll actually see some, I don't know how big or how bad, but I think that some of the big companies are tied into our 401k system, right? And I believe you're going to see some pace of change that's going to be faster than the ability of some of these big companies to adapt. And I also think that people are going to, especially these, don't look at the past for how the new generation is going to behave. You're going to have younger people go, you know what? I'm happy making a few $100,000 or $1 million,
Demasiado. Go ahead.
making $1 million with a few buddies of mine that we stick together, and we're not really worried about selling it. We've got plenty of money, right? The difference between 10 million versus 100 million kind of becomes less important, right? And I think that there's a newer generation that's going to look and go, what kind of community did I build? What kind of ecosystem did I create?
Yeah, I think, we have seen that vision. We saw that in the 1960s, and we've seen it before, and I think that's a great vision. I think that if you look at the whole idea, the reality of what will your kids do, to quote, make a living? What will your kids do, right, to quote, to do whatever they want to do? We've always had those. As a matter of fact, I think the wealthier they get, the more they want to go back to the countryside, and see nobody, right? They want to
Sure.
go to their ranch, right? They want
I've
to go
worked
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
Yeah.
They want to go and live in the Amazon. They want to go to the bowels of Africa, right, and live with nature. But what we got to do in terms of how we think about opportunities, right? And it goes back to the school system. It goes back to the education system. And you're right. We've gutted a lot of stuff. So what you're saying, and now remember that I remember when Microsoft was three people. I remember when Dell was one person. I remember when Whole Foods was three people, and there were small companies then, right? And I remember when IBM, look at the IBM was, just kind of one person. And as Llewellyn would say, from that grew an opportunity structure. And we've always said the following nowadays: with every new technology, jobs were destroyed, but they were also created. And the big theoretical question is this also true with the rapid development of AI? And the fact that right now, if I have some land, I can go get me a big tractor that's autonomous and just sit here and then I can plow the land, no human beings. I can plant, no human
Terraforma.
beings, right? Robots, right? And that's
Yeah.
what, my father had degrees in agriculture, and that's what he concentrated on, right? But I can do that right now. I can sit in my house and plow a field, grow the crop, and no people involved. So my question is, with AI, what kind of jobs, new jobs, will AI create in the future? I understand the technology. I understand we're going to print stuff out. I understand all that. But as Henry Ford said, I'm going to pay my workers some more money so they can also buy a Model T.
I I think that there's going to be a bit of a shift of people going, how do I put it into my own ecosystem and not just, make more money and pay up the chain of command, if you will, right?
Mm-hmm.
Either be it taxes or stockholders, right? I
Mm-hmm.
really think that people are going to look at that and go, man, this system isn't serving me and my future generations, right? So I think there's actually going to be there's a company called a Quantum Interface. They do a augmented reality, but they're also layering in artificial intelligence and things like CAD models and learning. So the ability to circumvent the whole gated moat ecosystem of education and the ability for people to create networks, right? Because used to be, you know, we'll use the country club as a good thing of you had a moat and people would do those business deals in there. And if you were not in that environment, then you didn't have access to that, right? There
Mhm.
were, I see a tremendous downturn in a lot of these professional organizations. And there are groups that are on, meetup.com or, Luma or all sorts of other stuff. And hell, go to an event. You ever been to Fiesta in the bottom of Capital Factory? Man, that is just full of energy. And none of those people I've ever seen at any, professional organization, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're in there and they're in a whole different ecosystem. So looking back and, worried about what are kids going to do these days, every time I think of somebody changing something, I just kind of reflect and go, I got this little mantra that I repeat in my head of, I'm sure there was a couple old dudes when the automobile came along, going, and man, none of these kids know how to shoe a horse these days, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sure,
Yeah. Thank you, Ron.
sure.
Yeah.
So,
I'd like to mention something that I think is very important, that you must look at the whole. You can't just look at the parts that make up the whole. And one of the phenomena of our time that all four of us have been the beneficiaries of is that basically since the end of the Second World War until today, more people have lived better on the earth than ever have before. If you try to break why that is, it's because of peace, because of oil, energy, because of electricity, delivered energy in very special, useful, humanly adaptable, usable ways, uh, and because of a concept of improvement, that the whole can improve, that the children can exceed the parents in success, in happiness, in life expectancy. If you bring, and there are other factors that make to this golden period, it's not guaranteed it'll last, but if we use AI intelligently, it will be just the beginning of this, and it would be a reasonable goal to expect to try to extend this well-being to the rest of the world. If you wanted to be rather simplistic about it, call it the middle classing of the world, because the middle class is larger than it has ever been and enjoys a degree of quiet prosperity and comfort, the like of which was never even conceived of before the 19th century.
so I was gonna share something real quick, maybe. So, think about the difference of something called the delivery economy, Uber Eats, DoorDash. People pay roughly the same amount of money for the cost of the delivery of the food that they buy, and then they tip the company. I never thought the convenience and my time would really be that important, that people would just no longer, want to go to the store themselves because they really think, or they actually do have proof that keep doing what they're doing is far more valuable than getting in the car to go buy the thing, and they'd rather pay anybody. I don't think that anybody thought 10 years ago that that would become such a incredible force. And I think that I call it butler services. I think that that's more and more where things are heading, meaning the ultimate commodity is time. And my time and not wasting my time is why I want to have autonomous cars, is why I want to have all this automation and flying vehicles. It's it's why I want to print my own car in my own garage because I just thought of it and I don't have time to think about it and put the order a year in advance or 6 months in advance. Don't you think that time is really the ultimate driver of what's going on?
I want to comment on that because when I was a kid, everything was delivered.
Hmm.
The milkman delivered the milk. The laundry was picked up. The laundry was picked up by the cleaners, and they were
Hmm.
delivered back to your house.
Right.
In southern Louisiana, we would go to the store, and the mother could not walk down the aisle. People would deliver it to your house. And of
Hmm.
course, more importantly, almost anything you wanted, it was called, we didn't have credit. It was called cash and carry. And
Hmm.
what people would do would be to deliver stuff. The
Hmm.
ice cream truck came daily in the
Hmm.
summers, a delivery system.
Yeah.
So in a theoretical world, we're kind of going back to the future. The
Hmm.
difference is it's going to be delivered by a drone now.
Right.
that's
Right.
that's the difference. So I think time is already good, but this is what we're missing, Andreas. The masses of people, and Llewellyn would tell you this, the masses of people right around the globe are also beginning to enjoy in certain kind of things that they have never perceived. I mean, the internet. I mean, I have Zooms
Hmm.
with people in India on business activity, right? I have people Zooms with in Africa with business activity, and in China with business activity. So I
Hmm.
think what's important here is that human beings have always done certain kind of things, right? But the question is, how do we do them? And that's what's exciting. Time is always important.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, RD, tell us in closing, what are you up to the next 6 months of the year? It's almost December already.
Right now, you mentioned 3D printing. I got a couple folks that are looking at me to help them do 3D printing concrete houses. Right. There's also some people doing using limestone dust from quarries. When you quarry limestone, there's all this leftover stuff. Well, to turn that dust into furniture. And if y'all will go to HiCam for the Austin Robotics and Artificial Intelligence meetup once a month, you'll see some of those tables and some of those
Mm,
swoopy cool things that are made there.
I'll see
cool.
if I can cancel one of my golf games to come. Yeah,
Johnny, final
yeah.
thoughts.
Well, I think it's good. I think because I've been following, we follow each other on LinkedIn, or we do, and it's just an exciting time. And he's exactly right. You know, everything from the present generation worry about the next generation, but they somehow make it through. But they made it through in the context of something. That context was things, manufacturing and jobs, and bringing income. There's always been a distribution where people would say, I just want the basis of life, and that's fine. And then there are people who want 5 houses and they want an airplane, right?
Hmm.
And speaking of, he mentioned the factory. Let's give a shout out to Josh Baer, my dear friend, whom I taught with at the University of Texas, who was killed in an airplane crash about a month ago. So God bless his family. So I think that all the technologies here, it's one of the most exciting ways to be alive. And
Yep.
what we're doing is, from a research point of view, is figuring out the kinds of things that people are doing, right, to make it through
Hmm.
life. Right?
Hmm.
And I've always said, you know, my first love was guitar and mic. I did it as a kid. I played in bands and I played classic guitar and etc. And I always feared that I can go to the bars of Austin and make a living if I had to. That is, you have to figure it out. And I think what he's informed us today is people now are figuring things out. And this is what has
Hmm.
always been. How do you figure it out for the next generation in the context of where we are?
Sure. Llewellyn, final
Uh,
thought.
I'd like to associate myself once again with John Sibley Butler. Something's got to be done about this. Uh, uh, in that much more was delivered to the home when I was a boy. Even the doctor came to the home. So a few DoorDash guys bringing pizzas does not impress me at all. Uh, if you think that's a revolution, you haven't seen the guillotine. Uh, as a general, as a general proposition, society, and I want to say that I envy RD because he's having so much fun doing something so totally worthwhile, and that's really a wonderful place to be. But society is standing at the moment on the runway or the non-runway, the hard sand at Kitty Hawk, gaping. Oh, it took off. We have no idea what we're looking at. We have no idea of the beginning of the time of AI, and we simply haven't got a clue. And we are linear thinkers in an exponential time, and it's going to be tough to get used to that. But it is also one of the great possible moments in human history for a great leap forward, as the steam engine was a great leap forward, as identifying infectious disease was a great leap forward, and the birth of John Sibley Butler was an enormous leap forward.
You're right, and let's not forget about the guy who called into the radio station in Austin, Texas, and said, "My gosh, an airplane just landed with no propellers on it." That, my friend, is a true story.
Johnny, take us away.
It's a lesson too late for the learning, made of sand, made of sand. With a wink of an eye, my soul is turning in your hand, in your hand. Are you going away with no word of farewell? Will there be not a trace left behind? Well, I could have loved you better. I didn't mean to be unkind. That was the last thing on my mind.
Woo! Gentlemen,
Take care,
Argentina
everybody.
and England 0-0 halftime. Go enjoy the final half.
Bye, guys. Bye. Nice to see you, RD.
Nice to see you.
Likewise,
I'm going to go
Llewellyn.
watch the reruns of the Super Bowl just to keep the
Yes.
American tradition
Yes.
going.
There you go. Bye
Bye-bye.
now.